I want to focus on the race for the first spot Bitcoin ETF here in the US. Valkyrie, your asset management firm, has an application pending for a spot Bitcoin ETF here in the US with the SEC, among other asset managers, including BlackRock, Fidelity, and WisdomTree. And now industry experts expect that we could see the US launch its first spot Bitcoin ETF early next year. Do you think that's a realistic timeline? And are you feeling optimistic that your application and others will in fact get approved?
I actually do believe that we're going to see a approval early next year as well, sometime between January and March. I do have a high level of confidence that ours will be approved along with several others. As a matter of fact, I think most people will be approved all at once. And we're moving very quick to make sure that we're ready to go first week of January.
What steps are you taking to make sure you are in fact ready to go?
Well, the typical steps that you go through to launch an ETF, you set up a fund admin, you set up a custodian, you set up all your market makers, a lot of boring things that goes into. We have this entire punch list of all the things you have to do, including depositing a seed, getting a first audit. So those are all the items that we're going through the list of as we speak, trying to be ready before the end of the year.
So do you really think it's realistic that it will in fact happen? I mean, after all, the industry has been trying for about a decade, and we all know that SEC Chair Gary Gensler has been a vocal critic of crypto, although it's important to note that he recently said he will listen to his staff's input on a potential spot Bitcoin ETF. And of course, we also recently saw that court win for Grayscale when a federal court sided with Grayscale over the SEC in its attempt to convert its Bitcoin trust into an ETF. So how does all of that play into the equation?
Yeah, I actually believe that Gary Gensler is someone who is a big proponent of Bitcoin and a big proponent of this ETF launching. He's acted very favorable towards the crypto industry. I know a lot of people don't feel like he has, but the very first Bitcoin Futures ETF actually launched under his watch. He said he laid out exactly what he thought issuers needed to do to get there, and it played out exactly like he said he did. He came forward and said, in a 40 Act fund, I could see Bitcoin futures being launched, and about 90 days later or less, we had Bitcoin futures in the market. We have ETH futures in the market under his watch, and right now we're in a moment of time where the staff is working very hard to get a Bitcoin spot ETF into the market. So I absolutely believe that he's well educated, along with other people on the staff, about Bitcoin, about how it works, and how a Bitcoin ETF is going to work.
Expanding on that, memos released late last month revealed that the SEC met with asset managers BlackRock and Grayscale ahead of that much anticipated decision over a potential spot Bitcoin ETF. So I'm wondering, what does that signal to you? And did you have any meetings with the SEC recently on the topic?
Yeah, I mean, we speak with the staff all the time.
And about a spot Bitcoin ETF?
Sometimes, as well as others.
In recent weeks?
Well, I'm not going to really comment on our direct conversations with the staff, but what I will say is this. What the staff is trying to do right now is to make sure that markets function effectively and that all disclosures are in the filings before they launch. And those are two very important functions in the SEC. And I will say that I believe they're moving very quickly. They're being very thorough. There's a lot of speculation on when this will launch. My answer is going to be sometime after January 2nd and when they are ready. And but I think that we'll get there soon.
And it certainly will be very interesting to see what transpires on that front. But I'm wondering, what do you think will happen to crypto if these spot Bitcoin ETFs do in fact get approved here in the US? I heard you say that you think it will be massive for Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is?
Well, there's two buckets of cryptocurrencies really in the US, and that's ones that the SEC has looked at as being, and decided that they're not securities like Bitcoin. There's also a lot of other cryptocurrencies that are still questionable in their minds. So I don't think it's necessarily a big deal for all of crypto, but it's certainly a big deal for Bitcoin. And as far as how big it could be for Bitcoin, Bitcoin is a very cyclical industry. It runs in 4-year cycles based on mining halvings. And we're now at the point of the cycle where we're at the typical bottom of the cycle moving up. So not only are we in an upward bull market cycle, we are also getting ready to have a Bitcoin spot ETF. So those two things together is really going to move markets in a favorable way.
And we're going to talk more about markets in just a bit, but I'm wondering, what prompted you to file an application for a spot Bitcoin ETF specifically right now? I believe this is your second attempt. BlackRock filed its application for a spot Bitcoin ETF, and then many other asset managers followed suit. So I'm wondering, did that influence your decision at all, especially because BlackRock is the world's largest asset manager after all? So I'm wondering if that contributed to your filing.
Yeah, it actually didn't. So we actually filed for a spot Bitcoin ETF back in January of 2021.
That's right.
And so we've been working on it ever since then. We have, of course, filed amendments to some of our 19b4 filings, given new information and things like the surveillance agreement that came out with NASDAQ. But we've been working on this really now almost 3 years. So BlackRock really didn't influence us a whole lot. We kind of came in and started that whole first wave of filings back in 2021, and we just continued to work on this in any way we can.
What do you think BlackRock's move to file an application for spot Bitcoin ETF signals to the industry and about crypto? Does it perhaps show people that there's growing interest and acceptance in Bitcoin from institutional investors?
It really does. What that signals to me is that they're getting demand. I don't think BlackRock is going to do something because they're uncertain about the demand that they're getting. And of course, BlackRock and firms like that are very large, not only are they catering to a retail or a financial advisor audience, they're catering to pension funds and insurance companies. So when you're getting demand on that side of the institutional market, it's really what prompts you to start launching products. So we believe that insurance companies, or we know for a fact, insurance companies and pension funds are looking at Bitcoin as an investment.
Now, Valkyrie recently moved to convert its Bitcoin Futures ETF to include Ether futures as well. So I'm wondering what prompted that move and how is it going so far?
Yeah, so first of all, about the time that we were getting close to an Ether futures ETF approved, we started getting indications that Bitcoin spot was going to move forward. So really, if you have a Bitcoin futures ETF in the market, it probably goes to zero as far as interest as soon as spot launches. So on the one hand, we looked at that product and said, well, Bitcoin spot is superior. It's coming soon. Why would we keep that around the way it is? But it was easy to convert that to a Bitcoin and Ether futures product. So we did that because we believed that that's what the market was demanding out of futures, was some kind of combination. It wasn't demanding Bitcoin futures alone anymore with spot coming. And it's actually worked out quite well for us. We've traded on a lot of volume in that combination fund, and it gives people an opportunity to invest in both places at the moment.
Why do you think the SEC approved a Bitcoin futures ETF and not a spot Bitcoin ETF, especially when other regions around the world are already offering these investment vehicles, including Canada?
Yeah, well, I really think it has to do with custody. So if you look at, if you and I are just individuals holding Bitcoin and we're transacting, we have to be very careful not to send our Bitcoin to the wrong address. We have to be very careful about our OPSEC. It's not like when you're trading bonds or equities and you send it to the wrong account or you make a mistake, you can just call up the bank and say, hey, I made a mistake. Can you send me my bonds back? Bitcoin doesn't work that way. So I believe that the SEC has been very concerned about the custodian issue. And futures doesn't have that problem. So it's a baby step to get there so that you can still get exposure to the Bitcoin market without having all the security issues and custodian issues that the SEC had concerns around.
In October, Grayscale Investments filed to convert its Ethereum trust into an ETF. The next month, BlackRock filed for a spot Ether ETF. So I'm wondering, what do you make of those developments? And does Valkyrie have any plans to file for a spot Ether ETF in the near future, perhaps in 2024?
Yeah, well, look, I can't really make any comments on things that we might do in the future. But what I will say is that if a Bitcoin spot ETF is approved, it does make good headway for an Ether spot to be approved as well. There has been conversations coming out of regulatory agencies about whether or not ETH is a security or not, and most of those have been, no, it's not a security. So I still think that needs to be settled. But once that's settled, given that there's this precedent of Bitcoin spot, I think it will, I don't think we're too far away.
Turning back to markets, recently we saw major cryptocurrencies retreat a bit after hitting fresh highs for the year, with Bitcoin surpassing $44,000. Now, despite the slight pullback, Bitcoin is still up about 150% since January 1st. Ether is up more than 80%. So what do you think is driving markets right now, and how much of it is because of that Bitcoin ETF hype?
Well, I think there's really three things moving the Bitcoin price market at the moment. One of them obviously is the ETF, and I think there's a lot of excitement around it, and people feeling like they're front-running BlackRock, you know. And but you also have a good positive momentum in the current economic cycle of Bitcoin. So this is the time of year where, you know, we generally pause, even though there hasn't been the pause that we normally get in this part of the 4-year cycle. But it really starts moving again in January and then in May. So we do have a halving happening in the mining world here in April, and that usually drives prices higher. The third thing that I'm going to mention, this is really important because Bitcoin is seen as a risk asset a lot of times. But the third thing that's happening is there is a high expectation that we will see lower rates in April or May. So I actually expect that the Fed will cut rates in May, and those rate cuts will actually drive risk markets higher through the election cycle.
Now, I recently interviewed Anthony Pompliano, the founder of Pomp Investments, and he believes that Bitcoin's bull market has begun. Do you agree?
I agree. Yeah, it's absolutely begun, and it's happened a little faster than I thought it would. Frankly, I didn't think it would happen for another 3 months, but it's happening now, and I do believe prices will exceed 100,000 by the end of next year.
And what about 150,000 by 2025, as Bernstein predicts?
Easy.
Wow.
Easy.
You are certainly an optimist on crypto, right. I can assure you. But on that note, what's your outlook for crypto in 2024 in a nutshell?
Yeah, no, look, I really think that there's going to be a lot more adoption. There's going to be a lot more building. There's really interesting things being built even on the Bitcoin network itself. We'll see how long that lasts. Usually hype also runs a lot of these markets, and we're seeing, you know, NFTs come back, which, you know, big hype indicator. But look, I think that Bitcoin continues to power higher, starting January, February, all the way probably past 100,000.
And what can people expect from Valkyrie in 2024?
A Bitcoin spot ETF.
Well, it certainly will be very interesting to see if that does in fact happen. Before we go, I do want to mention CoinShares is positioning itself to potentially buy Valkyrie's crypto ETF wing. That announcement happened last month. So I'm wondering what was behind that decision, and what do you see happening with that?
Well, really, you know, from my perspective, you know, they've always been friends of ours, and really good partners. So they were the first Bitcoin ETF in Europe. So they're much bigger than us. So when we're in this race with 13 other issuers, we thought on our end it would be a great idea to have a partner that's done it before.
Thank you very much, Steven McClurg, CIO and co-founder of Valkyrie. We so appreciate you joining us here in New York City.
Thank you so much for having me.